So thank you, everyone. Everyone here at Tushita and all of you online. So today's session will carry on from where we were yesterday. But even if you weren't here yesterday with us, that's okay. There's still each of these sessions, pretty much standalones, as they say. So please be comfortable. First, we'll start with posture and motivation, as usual. So what we emphasize at the outset is as much as we can, and this is not easy because of normally our pretty hectic lifestyles, hectic outwardly and pretty hectic, I'm sure, inwardly, meaning in this so-called body-mind mechanism. But if we can be still, as still as we can, actually bodily, and relaxed, again, as relatively relaxed as much as we can be in this hectic urban environment with its many vibrations of all kinds. Not just the cars and the people and everything, but even the electricity and the buzzing from the wires and all the invisible radiations and WhatsApp messages flitting across the ether. That all has an effect on us. And so it's a challenge to be somewhat open and relaxed, but we can afford to be open to that and not regard this as some kind of grueling test or competition or performance. So we can be relaxed. And the third factor, together with stillness and relaxation, we have sense of being attentive, awake, aware and awake to what's happening now, and not paying too much heed to what happened, what has been happening, however exciting or disturbing, or neutral, and not really paying too much attention or worrying or fantasizing about the future, because actually, who knows? Who knows what's coming next? And likely as not, it will not conform exactly to our plans or wishes. So we can be content in this present moment without any ambition, without any sense of competitiveness or having to prove anything to oneself or other people at this moment. We don't need to be a good boy or girl or whatever, or adult. We can just be in a state of calm, clarity, again, relatively speaking, on our cushion or chair. And our posture, which, if possible, can be upright, is in itself a statement of human sanity and dignity amidst whatever may be happening. This ability to sit upright is a statement, in a sense, of that possibility of stability, uprightness, dignity, human dignity. The front of the body is open, and that's, again, quite a statement, if you like. It's proclaiming our connection with others. We are not isolated beings, blobs of meat running around on a planet, whirling through space. We're not just that. We are human beings who need to associate with each other and who depend on one another from even before we were born. So we're in a state of interconnectedness, interdependence, and that's a very crucial understanding, something to remember again and again. We often forget in our egotism or self-centeredness. We forget how much we owe and are connected to others. So the front of the body is open, the heart is open, you might say, willing to connect to the world. And since the world and its inhabitants are in such a, one might say from a Buddhist perspective, such a state of dukkha or suffering, then it behoves us to be aware of that, and if possible, to engage in thought and action and speech in a way that benefits rather than harms these beings, all these beings, isn't it, who only want to be happy, don't want to suffer at all. We know that because of our own situation. It's not theorizing. And these beings are in a state of confusion, bewilderment, due to misapprehending the nature of the I, the nature of reality as a whole. And on the basis of that, we are engaging in actions detrimental to our happiness, our contentment. We're engaging in actions motivated by aversion and clinging desire, clinging attachment. What one teacher calls a kind of, we're driven by a kind of ape mentality, not wishing to, be unkind to the apes, but yeah, we can be very, very subhuman in the way we behave. This is due to the power of the distorting or disturbing emotions. So when we see that situation, and also when we recollect Lord Buddha's teachings that this is all reversible, that we all have the Buddha nature, and it's just a question of recognizing that and fully realizing and nurturing it, when we realize that, and the fact that people, through their ignorance, are just creating causes for more and more unhappiness, then it leads to a sense of sorrow, a sense of sadness, a sense of wanting to really be of some help for others. Like a mother who is disturbed that her child is continuing to behave and act in a way that only creates more suffering for the child. The mother feels sad about that, feels very concerned and responsible to help her child. So in that way, we could develop a sense of, kindness and tenderness towards others, based on that sense of kindness towards ourselves as well. So I've said a few things, we can reflect on that. What I've said so far, please reflect on that with your own critical intelligence and connected with feeling nature as well, not just up in the head, but connected with your feeling, your experience, so that it doesn't remain as pure theory or words. Spend a little time on this. One sense of connectedness, how much we owe to others. And surely we can behave in a way that is going to help rather than harm the precious living beings. So please be relaxed, have the facial muscles relax around the eyes, the mouth. It's very easy to tense them in a state of alertness and concentration, but let there be a softness in the face, like the softness in the faces of the portraits of the great masters of the past. Especially one thinks of Raphael or Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, or, there are many, and of course, beautiful images of the Buddha. There's a sense of softness, grace, and almost like an inner smile or contentment. So Let the face not be grim, like somebody preparing for some very unwanted task, but let it be relaxed and open, like soft like a child's. And then one could arouse the thought, an aspiration such as, for example, how wonderful it would be if all these beings, all these myriad beings, people I know, mother, father, friends, relations, school friends from the past, friends now, and all the other beings that one hears about, sees on, our devices. How wonderful if all of them could, be free of their suffering, free of their difficulties, free of emotional, mental, physical pain, and the causes of that, since there are definitely causes for that pain, according to Lord Buddha. So how wonderful if they could be free of that. And not only that, it wouldn't be enough to just wish them freedom from it, however positive that aspiration might seem to be. We could also take it a bit further and reflect, well, maybe I myself could do something to help. How could I help others be free of dukkha, dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness, and its causes? What could I do? Even if it's just a little. Might be something quite small, or, well, not so small for us, but something like, for example, if we use a lot of harsh or sarcastic speech, maybe, if I stop speaking like that, it would have a very, calming effect. It would lead to less pain and suffering for several people, maybe quite a few people. So how wonderful if I could behave like that. It would alleviate the mental misery of several people in this world. And of course, in the great vehicle Buddhism or Mahayana Buddhism, the aspiration is pretty amazing, pretty vast, overarching. It's, how wonderful if I could become a fully awakened person. not only how wonderful I'm going to become, I must become a fully awakened person so that I can really engage in extraordinary activities for the benefit of others, due to having fulfilled my potential, the human potential, totally fulfilled it, and let go of all limiting qualities, because if we're honest, probably we can see how right now our love, our compassion, it's a little biased, isn't it? It doesn't extend equally to everybody. It's rather, it's limited, and our wisdom is limited, our intelligence. For example, we really want to help somebody. We have a marvelous, wonderful motivation. We're very kind-hearted. So let's say we want to help somebody. We have no idea how to really do it. We have a vague idea, of course, be kind to them, speak to them nicely. But when they ask for our advice, what to do, how to do it, what to practice, what not, we really don't have much idea how to give specific, skillful advice to that person. We really don't know. We have a limited understanding of this person's situation, although we deeply want to help them. This happens a lot, doesn't it? Can't even help ourselves, can we? We really want to help ourselves be happier. Sometimes we have no idea what to do next, how to create the causes for that happiness in a specific way. Anyway, so we aspire to be a fully awakened person who does have the ability to guide others in a very, very precise and wonderful way, due to the unlimited, you could say, awareness that they have generated, and which you and I can also generate, by the way. It is not just a few elites, people who can become awakened beings or Buddhas. Everyone has the potential. Not because we're a chosen race or anything, but yeah, in the sense we're human beings, we have that potential to awaken our Buddha nature, the pristine, pure consciousness that resides deep within us. One way of putting it in inadequate language. Yeah. So that's why we sit like this, to remind ourselves we're going to need tremendous confidence, dignity, courage, stability to engage in this work, this action for ourselves and others. We can't be half-hearted about it. We can't be lazy, and so forth. We need, yeah, we need perseverance. We need energy. We need wisdom, compassion of the highest order. However, at the very least, we can aspire to not harm others, reduce the harm we create for others. Okay. All right. So let's just a few words before I look today, and we can go through part of chapter 6 of a very marvelous work by an 8th century person called Shantideva. We will look at the patience chapter, begin to look at the patience chapter from his great work, entering into the Bodhisattva's deeds, or engaging in the Bodhisattva's way of life. or sometimes called guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. Bodhisattva being that being who deeply, genuinely aspires to strive for Buddhahood, full awakening, in order to be of the greatest benefit to all living beings and lead them all to Buddhahood, guide them to Buddhahood. So an extraordinary aspiration. It's not just to help somebody with a meal or advice or loving kindness or protection temporarily, which are all wonderful things, but to guide and to help beings to attain their highest potential. And of course, be totally free of suffering forever. That's the aspiration of the Bodhisattva, to rescue all beings from pain. Yeah. Okay. So just a few comments. If we look at the title, what we've chosen for these short talks and reflections, awakening, yeah, what is it? Awakening a heart of love and compassion in difficult times. What is a difficult time? What is a difficult time? It depends on our definition of difficult. I know somebody for whom looking after a balcony of pot plants while I was away was very difficult. And the person said they couldn't do it. It was too much responsibility. They didn't want to do it. And yet there are people who, care for people, many people in very deep and genuine ways for a lengthy period of time. There are people who climb mountains. So, there's all sorts of stories of what human beings can do. All you have to do is open Netflix or, some other channel or what do they call platform now. And so you'll find all kinds of people who are engaging in actions which most of us would find horrendously difficult. And for them, it's just a challenge, right? So what for us is difficult or crisis is, as the Chinese so rightly say, also an opportunity. I say the Chinese because apparently in their script, the character for crisis, which you could say crisis, difficulty, is also the character they use for opportunity. So maybe, difficulty is an opportunity. And we use words and we get affected by the words that we use. There are many words we could choose, and you see them every day in the newspapers. And there are many loaded words, words which strike fear or loathing into the heart, or attraction and affection. It depends. So a word like difficulty, yeah, that's it, it's just a word. A word, take death. Death. It's a word referring to a process, which we perhaps fear because we don't understand it. We haven't examined it. And we haven't examined what might be the causes for fear of death. Anyway, there are many ways to work with that. So the word difficulty it's a label. It's a label we use. If we change the label, then we can work with it very creatively. We could say it's opportunity, A difficulty is an opportunity. It could show us, you might be having an incipient heart attack or even have a heart attack of a minor kind, and that's a difficulty, right? But then you then find out how to change your lifestyle. Of course, you need to stay alive, so hopefully someone takes you to the hospital and they do what they do. You survive, and then you begin to think, well, maybe I should follow some advice. Oh, goodness, hello. Yeah, and sorry, I saw someone in the front row I wasn't expecting. So you use that situation as an opportunity to engage in something more beneficial. This is very simple. This is not deep psychology. Everything I'm saying is as old as the mountains, as I think Gandhiji once said about what he was saying. It's all very old wisdom. It's all, it's nothing new. I'm just stating it in a strange accent and, maybe using some different examples. So anyway, difficulty. Difficulty is associated with suffering, right? If it's difficult, it's suffering. So let's examine that word, suffering, and let's see what Buddha says about suffering before we turn to Shantideva's 6th chapter on patience, which we could spend so much time on and which would be so beneficial and which we will spend time on. Okay, so difficulty, suffering, difficulties cause suffering. Okay, so what is suffering? And let's examine that from the Buddhist perspective. And this will be revision for people who've heard it before, so they can take a short nap or, do something while I talk about this, because they know about it. And there are some people here who like taking naps and teachings, which is very fine by me, no problem. As one teacher said to someone who was engaging in idle gossip and stuff, he said, look, better you just go to sleep. Rather than engage in idle gossip, you just sleep. So some people might be thinking I should sleep, but anyway, I have to stay awake. So suffering. Of course, Lord Buddha said birth, sickness, aging, death are suffering. And each of these topics can be really examined very deeply to see how they are of a suffering nature. I might pick one of them in a moment. But he also said, not getting what you want is suffering. Getting what you don't want is suffering, Not having a sense of certainty, the uncertainty of life is suffering. For most people, okay? We're talking about suffering here in the context of what we said yesterday, the uninstructed worldling, meaning a being who is not yet soaked in Dharma wisdom, a being who is as yet very immature from a Dharma point of view, who has not yet, for example, taken to heart at least the 3 of the 4 seals, like of Buddhism, which says that all compounded phenomena are impermanent, all contaminated phenomena are in the nature of suffering, all phenomena are selfless and empty. For beings who haven't heard these words, let alone reflected on them, for them, we're saying not getting what you want, getting what you don't want is tremendous suffering. It is more suffering for them than for people who have begun to integrate the teaching of impermanence, the teaching of contaminated things being suffering, and they've integrated a little bit the fact that things are not as solid and concrete as they appear, including oneself. And so therefore, oneself and phenomena are empty and selfless, have no independent, intrinsic, concrete reality. So what is suffering for the uninstructed worldling? Suffering is, we could say, let's take 3 kinds, 3 divisions of suffering, and then we may look a little bit just at one of the first 4 that I mentioned, birth, sickness, aging, and death, just to give a flavor of how one would investigate it from a Buddhist perspective using analytical meditation. So first level is what we call suffering of suffering. This is just a term. It refers to the kind of pain that you and I easily can distinguish. Physical pain, the mental pain when you lose somebody, or you're separated, or you're very badly, you're hurt, you are wounded by somebody's words, or the lack of thanks or gratitude that someone is showing you. That is very discernible suffering we feel. We feel it. It's not difficult. Or hunger, thirst, all these things we can feel. Animals can feel this level of suffering very easily, just like we humans. So this is the first level, which is obvious. And this is what we usually mean by the term suffering in English, which is why suffering is not a great translation of the Sanskrit or Pali dukkha, which is more, we could say, unsatisfactoriness. Or if we look closely in other ways, and this, of course, is a whole other way of looking at it and would require more investigation, but one author has very well brought out the meaning of dukkha as a crowded space. A mind which is potentially naturally spacious and open and free and unlimited and loving has become crowded with entanglements, with thoughts, with conceptions, conceptual elaborations, and is driving itself insane with all these knots of thought and conceptions and worries and fears and so forth. So anyway, dukkha is this, in Sanskrit, the sense of unsatisfactoriness. Unsatisfactoriness. It's not just this gross level of suffering that the English word suffering evokes, okay? Then the second level of suffering, or dukkha, let's use dukkha, okay? Because that's the word the Buddha used. He didn't say suffering. So dukkha, the second level, is called the change, suffering of change. The dukkha connected with change. So what does that mean? This is the real slap in the face for us uninstructed worldlings, because what it's actually saying is that what we take to be pleasure is also suffering, is also dukkha. Sorry, it's dukkha. Because obviously, when I dig into my first bite of hot, thick custard, cooked in the proper British style, for me, it's not a suffering sensation, it's pleasure. So it's not suffering in that sense, but it's, from a Buddhist perspective, it's still dukkha. Why? Because if it were not dukkha, it would mean that the more I engaged in eating that custard, the more I should feel pleasure and happiness and so forth. But that is not the case. The more I eat, the less satisfying it will become, the more bloated my stomach will become, and after a while, I'll become sick. And because of my age, I'll become sicker than when I was, 30, 40 years younger. So that's the suffering of change. What appears to be pleasure, what appears to be happiness, because we are not very careful with our language. We say, oh, it makes me happy to eat custard. It makes me happy to have apple crumble and custard, at St. Martin's in the Fields at Trafalgar Square or wherever, So, but that is also suffering of change, because it changes, it changes. You meet someone who you think is sent from some far planet, your soulmate, to make you happy in this life. And within a few years, you realize they weren't from the planet you thought they were from, and you're having a difficult time with this person, why? This was supposed to be pleasurable. It was pleasurable. It was intensely pleasurable, maybe, but it's still dukkha. It's prone. It's got the seed of suffering in it. It's got the seed of change that is going to cause disquiet. It's going to cause a roughness in the mind. It's going to cause anxiety and pain and maybe fear and loathing, and also spending a lot of money on lawyers. So, we never know. We are so attached to wanting pleasure for ourselves and so attached to permanence that it's the change that occurs is very, very painful for us. But we often don't notice it. So that first spoonful or the first, honeymoon or whatever, it feels wonderful, but the seeds of corruption, you could say, are there, to use so striking language, not quite biblical, but anyway, the seed of corruption is there. So it is changeable suffering. It is not pure happiness. It is not pure happiness. Pure happiness should be you're engaging in an activity, it leads to continuous bliss or pleasure. There's nothing in samsara, in ordinary life, for us uninstructed worldlings that can give that kind of happiness, pleasure. Yeah, I challenge you to find that. So suffering of change, the second one, and this is a big insult to us and to our ego, because we spend most of our life trying to achieve these kinds of happiness. Perfect partner, perfect house, perfect property, perfect linen, perfect knives and forks and everything else, perfect holiday, perfect blah, 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 nice food, nice this, nice that. But nothing is good enough. Nothing can make us content for reasons that I'm sure most of you know. The mind is not satisfied. The more pleasure it has, often, then the more it wants, or the more higher kind of or intense pleasure it wants. It gets bored with the ordinary pleasures. And so it strives for more and better, like that. Otherwise, why would people queue up, spend all night queuing up in a cold British winter in Oxford Street for the newest Samsung to emerge in the morning in the store? Why would they do that, But they think, yeah, more, better, more storage, more this, more that, more, I don't know. It's very difficult for us 20th century people to understand these things properly, but there are obviously good reasons for people to queue up all night, even in winter, or whatever they do. So, suffering of change, that's the second level of suffering, and that is really bad news for us. Bad news, sorry. What we consider pleasure, happiness is not happiness. It's not pure happiness. It leads to sorrow. It leads to unsatisfactoriness. That's what it leads to. It leads to disillusion and pain and exhaustion and the longing for more. And this is very, very, very difficult. Okay, third level, which is the basic foundational level, which on the basis of which these other levels of suffering can exist, as our old timers here know, those who are awake. The third level of suffering is the fact that this body and mind we have, what we call the aggregates of body and mind, the five aggregates of the form, the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the other mental factors, and the six consciousnesses, these are all tainted by the seed of delusion and karma, by delusion, let's say, by ignorance, by anger and attachment. And also we've then created all these contaminated activities based on anger, attachment, ignorance, jealousy, pride, etc., etc., which has led to this kind of body and mind that we have today. And so we might be very, very proud of our present body and mind, in the sense that we might have a very good, handsome body, beautiful body. We may have a mind that is considered by others extraordinary, even. We may have many degrees and have a command of 10 or 15 languages. But still, this body-mind complex, these aggregates, as we're calling them, as they're called in the Abhidhamma teachings, these aggregates are in the nature of dukkha, because their cause is delusion and karma. They have been brought into existence through the power of the deluded states of mind and the contaminated action, or the action which is going to lead to unsatisfactoriness, which is conditioned by these delusions. So due to grasping at a self, for example, a me, I, me, mine, I engage in actions, aggressive actions and possessive actions, wanting, not wanting, pushing away, harming, grabbing, based on this strong sense of I, and wishing to be happy and wishing to push away that which appears to disturb our happiness. So due to that, these aggregates are contaminated. They cannot lead to lasting happiness right now in this state. They just cannot. This does not contradict the fact that within these five aggregates is hidden the gem of the Buddha nature. That is there, but we're not aware of it. And we might be a little bit aware, but we aren't activating it sufficiently. So we can truthfully say that these five aggregates right now are an example, are a reflection, are a manifestation of dukkha. I don't know if this is making sense. Suffering is suffering, easy, okay. Suffering of change, we get that things don't get better, better, better. They get less, less, less pleasurable, less, less happy. And in the end, they come to an end, or they even create great pain, So they're not in the nature of true happiness. And then this very body-mind, which is a wonderful body and mind, of course, it is a very wonderful body and mind. To have a human body and mind is wonderful, but it is not yet separated from dukkha. It is in the nature of dukkha, sorrow. Sorrow, again, not the right word. It's in the nature of being a magnet for unpleasantness, you could say. This body-mind is a magnet for unpleasant sensations and feelings and all the rest of it, you know. So we could be a brilliant, person, most handsome person, but when we go home, the slightest thing makes us quarrel with our wife or children, and makes us say things which we might later regret or not even realize that we've said, or we may be an alcoholic or whatever it is. Brilliant but alcoholic, brilliant but violent, brilliant but unhappy. All these things are possible, aren't they? There's plenty of cases of this. So anyway, suffering. So we're all of us uninstructed worldlings who are not yet well versed in the Dhamma, not yet developed realizations of the teachings. We're all in this state. So when we look at it in this way, of course, initially we can get quite depressed. We might say, what's the saving factor? If this is the situation, how can I be free of this? But of course, Buddha, in the fourth noble truth, he gives a very clear indication of the way out of this. So there is a way out of it, and there is a way out of it because of who we are. We have the potential. Why do we have the potential? Because, as the teachings so clearly state, the contaminated factors are temporary, not permanent. The contaminations are like dirt on actually a very, very good quality piece of cloth that has got dirty. That's all. It's got dirty, but you have the right detergent and the right washing machine or whatever, and it comes out again pristine. You just have to apply the methodologies, the methods, and so forth. And this is using very crass, very gross language, I'm afraid. But there's no other way initially to describe probably, what happens. But we can see that the contaminants are not permanent, thank goodness. So there's no perpetual sinner or sin in Buddhism. We are not condemned to eternal damnation, the dirt, the corruption, the whatever you want to call it, is temporary. It can be eradicated completely because the root of it is ignorance, and the ignorance can be eliminated through wisdom, through the right kind of wisdom. Understanding the selfless, empty nature, the dependent nature of the self, so-called self, and of all phenomena, seeing that they don't possess any intrinsic, inherent isness or reality from their own side. Everything is in a state of relationality, you could say. Everything is in a relationship with other factors. This is an incredible teaching of Lord Buddha. Everything is related to something else. Nothing stands alone, So due to that, we can say the delusions, the problems are there due to causes and conditions. They're not inherent. So if they're due to causes and conditions, we can get rid of the causes and conditions. That's the thing. It's like, going to the doctors and the doctor says, yeah, you have this disease. It's not inherent in you. It has causes and conditions. I know what it is, and I know the antidote. I know the medicine that will get rid of these causes and conditions which are creating your sickness. It's not permanent. So this is something which can inspire us and help us not descend into depression when we hear these kind of teachings, because initially it may sound very, very bad news. On one level, it is bad news. On the other, we hear that, it's temporary. Wisdom can be activated. The ignorance at the root of everything can be destroyed. Yeah. It's like, anyway, Lord of the Rings came to mind. Those of you who've seen that epic or read the book, if you get to the right place and you throw the ring in the right place, then the world is saved from evil. We just have to get to that place through tremendous effort and do what has to be done. and then there is a freedom from the disturbing factors, from the root cause. Yeah. Anyway, so that's a little introduction to suffering. And so when we see the suffering in us and in others, and when we see how people are thoroughly confused about their situation, and especially people who have not had any guidance at all or any kind of teachings at all, any instructions, they're totally uninstructed, then we see how much they are floundering, how much they are without any kind of guide or refuge, and they really don't know what to do in their situation. They're just confused, like they're going around in a fog. They're going around in circles, whether the circle involves relationships, multiple relationships, or just trying to get more and more money, or more and more, books or records or whatever people collect, more and more this, that, and the other, more and more prestige, more and more friends on Instagram, more and more likes on their, postings, whatever it is. So we're going round and round looking for happiness, and we see that, and this helps us develop this incredibly important quality, which is again something which we have in us. We just need to develop it more, which is this sense of fellow feeling with others. Yeah, we feel for others because we're going through that too. So we can feel for them, especially those who really don't have any idea why it's happening, and feel that there's somehow, often they don't even know that they're in a state of discomfort or disease or suffering. It's like the patient who's obviously sick, and a good doctor knows they're sick, but they just insist, oh, I'm all right, it's just a little headache or something. A good doctor, through feeling the pulse and so forth, knows that person is very sick. So like Lord Buddha knows how sick we are. It's not just something minor, it's a deep sickness. So we feel compassion, basically. That word compassion, feeling with, here specifically in Buddhism, meaning an awareness of others' situation, their pain, their sorrow, their levels of dukkha, and seeing how it is something unwanted by oneself, unwanted by others, developing this deep wish for others to be free of that. Starting with seeing how we wish to be free of it, how the person we love most in this life, perhaps, they want to be free of suffering, So based on that, then we can expand that sense, that feeling of wanting others to be free, aspiring for others to be free of suffering situations, so that we cease to see people in terms of color or race or religion or which particular side of a arbitrary boundary they are living on, whether they're in Israel or whether they're in Gaza. They're all suffering beings, right? Yeah, some suffering much more than others, one might say, but from Buddhist perspective, everybody is suffering from these three levels of dukkha. Everybody is experiencing the three levels of dukkha, unless they're already a great bodhisattva or a Buddha. So they're all equally objects of compassion and love, of course, love being the wish for others to be happy. So I'm hoping this is making some sense. Is this making sense? Yeah. So, Sagar, it's making sense. Sorry, what's your name? Oh, yeah. Manish, it's making sense. Absolutely. Absolutely. Goodness me. Okay, that's good. Arunaji, is it making sense? You nodded off a little, I think. That's okay. That's good. You needed the rest. Okay, so yeah, that was just a little introduction, because when we say awakening the heart, awakening, love and compassion, what's the title? Awakening a wise and loving heart. Okay, wise and loving heart. Wisdom, of course, the ultimate wisdom is to understand the nature of the self and interdependence, dependent arising, but it's also a kind of wisdom, albeit a lower level of intelligence and wisdom, to understand what suffering is and how everybody is experiencing it. The people who are making us happy, so-called, and the people who are making us unhappy, all of them are in the same boat. We're all in the same boat on the ocean of cyclic existence, suffering from experiencing the three levels of dukkha, experiencing birth, sickness, old age, death. I don't know how many of you have experienced the, well, birth. Let's forget birth right now, although it is in one sense the cause of everything that follows, you know. Quite apart from the fact that it could be very dangerous and painful for mother and child. Let's look at, well, for sickness, you just have to, if you haven't already, go to a hospital, go to a cancer ward, go to an ICU, go and see someone who is very sick or wasting away, and not only sick in the body, but very afraid, whose relations don't want to tell them how sick they are, what they have, and the doctors engage in a battle to keep that person alive or to, whatever. But there are many examples one can take of the tremendous toll that sickness takes on a human, on a human being, on human beings. Especially in a society that cannot, in a sense, accept certain things, and which makes a big battle out of everything, and which makes things very complicated and often very difficult for people, unlike a more traditional society where somebody could be sick and then they accepted, okay, I'm sick, and maybe accepted that they could die in a much more natural way. But now, of course, we have means to keep people alive. So you could say, in one sort of ironic way, we give them a chance to stay sick longer and suffer longer, although we keep them alive longer. And all the relations can also have more suffering, taking care. And in one way, it could be very good. You can show love and compassion for someone in the time you have, but it's also a kind of prolongation of pain and suffering for everyone involved. And of course, the tremendous financial burden for some people, and so forth. Yeah. So sickness, anyway, all of us have been sick. We know what it's like. Often we feel like we're at death's door, even though it might just be a very bad flu or something. We feel dreadful. We feel dreadful. We can't enjoy the things we used to enjoy. We don't feel like the thing. We don't even like to think about the things that we enjoy almost. It's just painful. We can't get up. We can't turn over in the bed. We can't swallow food properly. We may not be able to get up and go to the toilet on our own. And we're talking about someone who is still very young. We're not talking about an old person. Of course, this is going to happen naturally when we get old. It's like being sick. Can be. If you've ever been with a very old person, it can degenerate to that. Pain in the limbs, unable to hear, unable to see properly, unable to swallow, unable to urinate properly, unable to do anything easily that one could do automatically earlier. Old age is, yeah, it's challenging. It is, to use a euphemism, it's challenging. It is deeply, deeply dukkha, a suffering nature for so many, especially those who have no recourse to any kind of inner world of contemplation or meditation, or who have no, who have not investigated the nature of the self, the worked with pleasure and pain in their life. Then old age is something horrible. And yeah, the kind of indignity that can come with that, the sense of isolation that can come with old age, tremendous isolation. Not necessarily because people have deserted you, but often because your senses are no longer functioning. So you can't hear people, you can't see people. You may not remember people, of course, if you have certain, senility or Alzheimer's, then you can't even, it must be incredibly sense of isolation and desperation, you know. So, and then of course, the fear for many, the fear of death, because it's never been investigated. It's always been a taboo subject. It's been one of those words like a bombshell, death. And so that is there on the horizon, if one's old and also sick. So there's tremendous pain and suffering, tremendous for people. And then there's, of course, the actual death itself, where one could speak a lot about that, but maybe I've just, given a sense, given a flavor of what is there. So already we're seeing how just analyzing in this way, we can open up our deeper understanding of our human situation. Yeah. And so when there are difficult circumstances, we can feel compassion even for the person who is giving us a hard time, because if we really reflect on what they are going through or what they will go through, what they have been going through, how that person is creating, of course, the karma, which is going to create tremendous pain for them later, how that is also so much suffering for them in the future. Let's look at Shantideva. Otherwise, I'll just go around in circles now. So Shantideva, one should start from page 1, but we're not going to do that again. We looked at quite a lot of Shantideva last year. But I urge people who haven't heard of this great author, this great bodhisattva, to read this text and commentaries on this text. There are many commentaries now available online and in book form. So difficult situations, difficult circumstances, they evoke aversion, don't they? Anger. The very first verse of this chapter on patience, Shantideva says that there's really nothing as dangerous as anger. He says in the first verse that even though we may have generated a lot of positivity, a positive energy over a long period of time, a moment of anger can destroy it. In the same way that a farmer, having worked very hard and harvested and got together a lot of straw and hay and dried it and kept it very carefully in a hanger or whatever, it can be destroyed with one match, one spark from a match, and the whole pile, mountain-like pile of straw goes up in flames. So positive energy is destroyed by anger. Just a moment of strong anger destroys a lot of positive energy. Like if after our session today, say we have a reasonable, nice, sort of good session, then at the end somebody gets very angry. What would that feel like? It would feel like the rest of the session had kind of evaporated and you went home with that sort of not very nice feeling in the heart, that because at the end somebody got very angry about something. It wouldn't feel good at all. So he says there's no transgression like hatred, no fortitude like patience. Thus, I should strive in various ways to meditate on patience. Patience here in Buddhism being the patience to be able to withstand difficulties, to not respond with anger, to be patient in working for others, to exert patience and non-hatred, non-anger in practicing, however difficult the situation is, in practicing the path, the spiritual path, or in dealing with people and so forth. One should always, that is patience, to be able to deal with these situations without developing anger. My mind won't experience peace if it fosters painful thoughts of hatred. This seems so simple, but we're just not obeying this, are we? We keep on having thoughts of aversion and going over scenarios in our head about what this person said or didn't say, what happened that we didn't like. We keep on doing this. So we keep on fostering painful thoughts in our head. So of course we're not gonna be peaceful, let alone develop love and compassion or wisdom. There's no room for it. Yeah, the mind is crowded. One of the definitions of dukkha. The mind is crowded with these conceptual elaborations. There's no space for love and compassion to arise. So I shall find no joy or happiness. Unable to sleep, I shall feel unsettled. I mean, there's so much here. If we relate this to the situation in the world, and also increasingly in India, it's not just the Western world. How many people, I wonder, really get a good, nourishing night's sleep in the world nowadays? Of course, forget the people in the war regions, in the war zones, the men, women, and children, and the soldiers even. I mean, what kind of peaceful sleep are the soldiers going to get? The soldiers whom we might feel are, the baddies sometimes, but what kind of life are they leading, When did they last have a shave or a hot bath or a kind, hand on their shoulder, a word of kindness or love in their ear, the soldiers out there, trying to kill people. That's not the optimum action for a human being, yeah? So, and of course, all these thoughts of wanting to kill, wanting to defend their people, their country, whatever, what kind of sleep are they getting? So with all of this turmoil in the mind, we will not have good sleep. We will not have, happy lives. We'll not have a peaceful, contented mind. So friends and relatives, they get disheartened with somebody who is angry, Shantideva says. Though I may be generous to them, if I'm an angry person also, they won't fully trust me. I'll not be fully trusted by others, in the sense there won't be that natural connection and trust with someone who is often angry. Yeah. In brief, there's nobody who lives happily with anger. Yeah? So there's this sense that we have to understand anger. Of course, there's so much material on anger, righteous anger, so on and so forth. And of course, there are various degrees of anger. We're not saying. But anger here means something very specific in Buddhism. It means where it's a kind of mistaken state of mind. It exaggerates the object. It exaggerates the ugly, unlikable qualities of an object and wants to harm it, wants to push it away, wants to say nasty things to it, or kick it. If it's a motorbike that's not working, you want to kick it, you want to smash it, you want to, some people may even shout at their cars or washing machines. I don't know. There may be many ways of dealing with furniture and things that are not working. But it's all leading to that sense of anger in the mind, that inability to cope with a difficult situation. The seed of anger is there, the seed of aversion, and it comes out in very powerful behavior, which leaves, again, an imprint on the consciousness. It's easier to then behave in that way in the future. This is very basic, important Buddhist psychology, that if we're angry again and again, it just becomes a pernicious habit. It's very hard to let go of it. And we can become angry with anything, So that one day in the future, when all of us, we go to restaurants and there's no human beings serving us, and we won't even know actually if the people eating with us on the table, if it's a long table, who is a human being and who is a AI machine or whatever. But we'll also get angry with these machines when they don't bring the perfect, you're supposed to be an AI, you're supposed to bring the perfect soup, you're supposed to serve it perfectly. And if they don't do it perfectly, we'll get angry with them. And if we're human, we will be putting imprints on our consciousness. And heavens knows what it does, maybe. AI machines, I'm not sure if they'll be engineered to not ever experience anger. Anyhow, hence the enemy, anger. So there's no enemy really in Buddhism, but the only enemies are these internal, afflictions. They are a kind of enemy. They are what we need to overcome. Hence the enemy, anger, creates suffering such as these, but whoever assiduously overcomes it will find happiness now and hereafter. So this is a kind of promise from Shantideva, I guess, that if we really overcome anger and its causes in the mind, we will find happiness now and later, meaning thereafter. Hereafter means now, in this life and future lives. So this is very important. The next verse, especially in the context of what we're looking at, wise and loving heart in difficult situations. This verse I'm going to read, Shantideva really, I think, got it right here somehow. We can reflect on this verse after I've read it and thought about it a bit. Having found its fuel of mental unhappiness in the prevention of what I wish for, so what I wish for didn't happen, okay? And in doing what I do not want, hatred increases and then destroys me. So it's saying we have a whole reservoir of mental unhappiness within us due to not having got what we wanted and having got what we don't want again and again in life. And due to that, irritation, anger, hatred has developed within me and it destroys me. It destroys me, it destroys my happiness. Basically destroys me. Anger, from a traditional Buddhist point of view, it's the cause for hellish experience. Anger is a cause for hellish kind of experience, whether you take it literally as a hell realm or hell or a hellish experience, a very powerfully hellish experience within the human existence. So think about that. Think of the situations in our life where we have not got what we wanted. We have experienced what we don't want at all, and it has led to this mental unhappiness. It's led to anger. It's led to resentment, chip on the shoulder, bitterness, resentment. Doesn't necessarily have to be hatred. I don't know the Tibetan, I'm afraid, or the Sanskrit. I mean, Dantideva is translated into Sanskrit. But the word here being used is hatred. Um, so I'm not sure there what the word was in the Tibetan or Sanskrit. But we could also add things like, irritation, resentment, bitterness, like that. It increases and destroys me. So check in your own life. Just reflect for a little while. I'll stop talking for a bit. Reflect on situations in your life. How much are they still with you? In the sense of they've created this sense of bitterness, lack of trust, maybe in yourself, and definitely lack of trust in others. You have a little bit of armoring, a suit of armor because you can't really open up and trust life even because of these difficult, this reservoir of mental unhappiness. Please reflect on this. Mm. I'll read the commentary by Pema Chodron, a Western nun. That'll give a little more insight on this verse. What triggers our anger? According to Shantideva, it's getting what we don't want and not getting what we desire. When we're heavily invested in our likes and dislikes, tiny reactions can escalate into violence and war. When we're afraid of getting stuck with something we don't want or deprived of what we need, our thoughts come in as reinforcements and escalate our anger and pain. Full-blown, destructive anger starts with subtle, uncomfortable feeling that things aren't going our way. A subtle pull, a subtle kind of fixation on that. So it's helpful to recognize this uneasiness before it escalates. If, however, we've already gotten angry, we could still try to find the patience to not act or speak. It's never too late to put an embargo on the fuel of misery. At any point in the process, we can pause and practice patience. Trungpa Rinpoche used to say that when something like anger arises, we should regard it as not me. It's not me. Just think of it as a little bug trying to land on you. If your mind remains open and free of bias, the bug has nowhere to land. Shantideva, in his own words, is saying the same thing. Anger is not me. It's just dynamic energy. If we don't identify with it, that energy remains unfixated and free. But if it freezes into want and don't want, however, then we can accurately predict the outcome. It'll cause us, the basically good us, to suffer. So you see, we're basically good, but due to lack of control over the mind, we allow things to escalate and we identify with the anger or the pain as me, and that creates the problem. There's always this fixation on the I, on the me, which is why ultimately to destroy anger completely, we need to destructure the self, our understanding of who we are, and see that we are not some solid, independent, concrete person. I'll stop now because I need to stop at 8 o'clock today, and we should have some little time for discussion. So if anyone would like to, and of course, if there is a lot of discussion necessary, then I can leave the laptop here, and one of the senior students, like Ajirji, can carry on and dedicate. Let's see what happens. So does anyone have any comments on what we've looked at so far? Or what all my words? Sorry, it was so much. There is something here. Just one sec. From the chat. I'm suffering because I anticipate suffering. And it's the repository of past pain as you said, that is the cause of that. Thank you for that insight. I'm suffering because I anticipate suffering, and it's the repository of past pain, as you said, that is the cause of that. So what can one do when one notices irritation arising? Well, one can take a few deep breaths and stop fixating on the thinking. We're always thinking. When we're irritated, usually we think about what's irritating us or the person or the situation, and thoughts are buzzing around in our head, even at a subtle level, I think. So one good advice I've heard, and which works, is to stop, take a few deep breaths, maybe really deep breaths, and breathe out loudly, and just let go. Don't think about what is irritating you, and try and come back to what it feels like in our body. What does the irritation feel like in the body? That takes the attention away from the thoughts, which actually make things escalate, as Pema Chodron said in her commentary. We are very, very good at escalation. You see, it's our habit. But we here need to de-escalate and that comes with more and more awareness. That's why one of the basic Buddhist teachings is to watch the mind all the time. And when something injurious arises to ourselves and others, as the text says, we face it and we avert it. We don't get involved with that dangerous, harmful thought or action or speech or whatever. And we de-escalate. We don't keep on thinking about it. Because thinking about it is very damaging. Yes?
What's the difference between klesh and dukh?
Klesh means delusion, anger, attachment, ignorance, pride, miserliness. Dukh is suffering.
Klesh is the source of suffering.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, of course, one could say in a general way, anger is suffering. But why are we suffering? It is said because our mind has been contaminated by these disturbing emotions, or klesh, often called afflictive emotions, sometimes generally called delusions, although not in the way that modern psychology uses that word, so be careful. Delusion is often just used in Buddhism to mean all of this whole group of disturbing emotions, which make the mind rough. That is their function, to make the mind rough, is one simple definition that Dalai Lama once gave. Delusions are that which make the mind rough and unpeaceful. And so any action motivated by these delusions is going to create more and more roughness, more and more misery, more and more dukkha, more and more pain of one kind or another, unpleasant feeling, unpleasant sensation, unpleasant situations, as in we've discussed in when we discuss karma, all the different kinds of effects of karma, in terms of rebirth, in terms of what we experience, in terms of the habits we have, and then in terms of the environment we experience, all due to the power of the disturbing emotions and the karma that we create.
What does gratitude role? What role does gratitude play in trying to deflect and actually appease those anger thoughts? Because I do that as a daily gratitude.
It's a very good point, yeah. Because actually it's not just about being grateful for the human situation we have, which is a very important basic Buddhist meditation, but Shantideva would say, yes, actually be grateful for the difficult situation and the difficult person, for example, without whom, how could we properly practice patience? If there weren't factors to test us, if everything's hunky-dory, as we say in England, and going very well, then we don't need to flex our Dharma muscles. We can just think that everything's okay and that Buddha actually made a mistake and that there isn't dukkha. Things are fine, What's he talking about? But so we can be grateful for not only the, in a sense, the beauty of life and the good things that happen to us, but we can be grateful for those people who test us. Because really, how are we going to develop good qualities if we're not tested? If we don't need to develop them, everyone, whether it's an athlete or, whoever, a weightlifter has to begin to do things beyond their current capacity, which is a little bit painful. But if they want to get better at something, they have to put in effort, Or if you want to do more meditation, you have to get up maybe that bit earlier in the morning, which is, tricky in cold weather. But well, one does it, So, yeah. One is grateful for that. And grateful is the overarching gratitude is for this wonderful, precious human body with the Buddha nature safely hidden within, which can never be destroyed. However idiotic we are, or gross and violent we are, the Buddha nature is never disturbed. It is there. It just becomes more and more obscured, but it is never destroyed. It cannot be damaged. So that, from Buddhist perspective, that's a great reason to be grateful for our Buddha nature, for our intrinsic goodness, you might say, our basic goodness, basic sanity. Because we say we're unhealthy because we have that yardstick that, what is health? We take health in a sense as primary, not sickness. Health is primary. And as the Dalai Lama says, compassion is primary. For the growth of an infant, the brain and the, neurological mechanism, everything to be a balanced, decent human being or whatever, a functioning human being, we need compassion and love from the parents, not hatred and anger. Hatred and anger will totally distort a child and a young person, right? So you could say in that sense that love and compassion are basic. So we're basically attuned to good things like love and compassion. Not good as opposed to bad, but, basic. That's the basic situation. To help us grow, we need love and compassion. So therefore, hatred and so forth are not primary in a sense. They are not the truth in a way. If you want something closer to the truth of emptiness or dependent arising, then it is love and compassion. So yeah, there's a lot to be grateful for. Yeah. So I think
you need the duality of those realities of suffering and of love. You need the opposites in order to.
Do we need the opposites? Do we need dualities?
Yeah.
I think we do in the beginning because we are dualistic beings. And then gradually, it is said, through meditation, deeper meditation, then that duality dissolves. I think it's hard to do on the intellectual level, but the meditators proclaim that duality goes when we do deep meditation, but also we know it can happen in moments of elation and great love, or even listening to music. And certain people who have used drugs in a creative way or in a controlled way, or even not in a controlled way, perhaps, they can experience moments of non-duality, of not feeling there's a independent I to worry about. It can be felt momentarily by people in a crowd when your football team scores the winning goal. There's this wave of elation and you no longer feel like a separate person. You feel oneness with this crowd of, Arsenal supporters in my case. You'll feel so elated that they scored the goal in the last dying seconds of the game. And, where is your suffering then? Where is good and bad then? There's just pure joy, that kind of thing. But that's a very momentary elation, or the momentary elation in the pub or whatever. But we do know that there are states where we can go beyond this sense of a little self struggling in this world, with its problems and so forth. Yeah. non-duality. But yeah, non-duality is a big one. Will discussing often about accepting death lead to less suffering? Yes, it will, if it's done properly. Because let's face it, as Shantideva says, the more we engage in something, the more we get used to it. So if we engage in fear and avoiding the discussion of death, then of course it will become more and more fearful. If we engage in a very intelligent conversation and analysis of death, as has been done in the Buddhist tradition, then we will become less and less afraid of it because we understand what is going on. And not only that, we understand what it is said will lead to less fear at the time of death, and even no fear at the time of death. That is all explained, how to not have much less chance of experiencing fear at the time of death. Which is basically, of course, connected with leading a balanced, good life, free of anger and attachment and so forth. So then there's no need to fear death at all. And even people who are not Buddhist or Christian or anything, they often have good deaths because they're being basically a very good, decent, kind human being. That's what leads to a good death. So then there's no need to fear death. So whether you believe there's nothing after death when you feel it's just all over, or whether you feel there is a future life, in both cases you can have a good death without fear. So yeah, it's like the fear of, say, there's a young child who fears going to school, but then they understand more and more about, that's not a great example because often school is a disaster. But, you might be afraid of what's around the corner, just, as a young child, but then your father and mother takes you out. So look, it's actually very nice around the corner. There's this nice park and there's this house with this nice little doggy or cat, so there's nothing to fear around the corner. Just because you can't see it now, let me take you there and show you. Oh, that's nice. There's a park around the corner. There's swings. You can play on them. So then the child is no longer afraid. So in the same way, when these great Buddhist masters who have experienced a controlled death and know what death is, what the process is very precisely, they can help us. They can lead us down that path, like the child being led around the corner. And something we didn't know about becomes something we know about. And so then there's nothing to fear. Yeah. So if you don't mind, we'll stop there and continue perhaps tomorrow. Yeah, there won't be a puja tomorrow. We'll continue with this very important topic. And I'd just like to thank everybody. And we'll dedicate the positive energy from this session, and we will avoid thoughts of anger or irritation, even if I spoke too much. Please don't be too irritated. You can, take a few deep breaths. So you see, what we're engaging in was something positive. It does actually it comes from the great wisdom and experience of the great beings of the past, and we can experience it now. That's the point. It's not just something other people experience. We can experience the benefits of reflecting in the way that Shantideva advises. We can benefit from understanding what Buddha meant about dukkha or suffering and the way out of it. We can benefit every time we develop a wholehearted motivation that goes beyond self-centeredness, and grasping at me, and what I want and don't want. We can benefit. So we've engaged in something positive. Let's dedicate it to the happiness and welfare of living beings, to reduction, ending of war, violence, famine, diseases. Specifically, may we also dedicate that we never be separated from authentic teachings and teachers, especially the great teachers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the other great teachers. May they have long and healthy lives. May they continue to inspire and guide countless living beings through this very disturbing and challenging time that we're living in, when the very future of the balance of the planet is in question, and when so many beings are suffering from violence war, from famine, disease. So may all of us become, like a guide, like a lamp for others, in the darkness. As Shantideva says, may we, our very existence be beneficial for others, whether they like us or don't like us, doesn't matter. May our very appearance before them, any connection they have with us, may it be beneficial for them, even if they hate us. May that hatred, just by, our presence, help them in some way. That's the Bodhisattva ideal. Just our very presence is beneficial for beings. May we help them in all sorts of ways. Yeah. And may the great compassion, loving kindness, bodhicitta, develop in our mind stream as quickly as possible. And wisdom realizing interdependence, emptiness, so that we not only want to help people, that we not only help people, but that we help people very skillfully in the right way, so that it's exactly what they need, not what we think they need, but exactly what they need. May we become like that. May we, in other words, become a fully awakened person. Janjo zemjo rembo che ma ke panam ke kureji ke ba nyamba me ba yang gong ne gong du belwara yo gang re ra we korwe jingam de pendan de wa malu jung we ne a chere zi wan den zing ya zo yi ya be zi te bardu teng yo ai chi. And our very kind late Lama, Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who passed away in April last year. May his reincarnation quickly be found, the unmistaken reincarnation. May there be a swift return, and then Rinpoche continue to guide us and future students in this and future lives. Yeah, may we never forget his kindness to us. Shantideva says, the last verse of his great work, I bow down before my spiritual masters, through whose kindness I develop. Okay, folks, thank you very much. See some of you tomorrow, I hope. Good night to everybody. Thank you.